If real citizenship is about not only rights, but mutual obligations to one another and to the country that we share, well, we grant corporations all kinds of rights. We grant them a form of legal personhood, in fact. What are the mutual obligations that should come along with that? What is the baseline of patriotic duty and regard for their fellow citizens that American corporations should have? I think we've totally missed the mark on that.
So we're in a moment of upheaval for both political parties, as we've discussed. We're also, I think, in a moment of upheaval about what corporate power is. And if you
Yeah.
think about that through the lens of NVIDIA or through the lens of Anthropic, part of the conversation is, what does a company owe the nation that enabled its creation and success? How do you think about that?
Well, we just started a new project at American Compass called Reclaiming American Citizenship, where we're trying to put words to the sense of what people think they've lost in the last few decades. Because it's economic, but it's also much deeper than just economics, right? People again feel this loss of a sense of shared agency, of mutual obligation to each other, of solidarity as a nation, and citizenship is a really powerful frame to talk about what full participation in a society and an economy and a nation should look like. I think it's interesting to think about corporations as citizens because good corporate citizenship has become this like PR marketing term for here are some nice programs we're going to throw some money at and we're going to go paint a school or whatever. Like this type of PR stakeholder capitalism, whatever, that's quite empty and has nothing to do with the core business proposition of these corporations. Well, I think we can go much deeper than that. If real citizenship is about not only rights but mutual obligations to one another and to the country that we share, well, we grant corporations all kinds of rights. We grant them a form of legal personhood, in fact. What are the mutual obligations that should come along with that? What is the baseline of patriotic duty and regard for their fellow citizens that American corporations should have? I think we've totally missed the mark on that. And you get these companies like NVIDIA who, to boost their short term profits, quarterly earnings, are selling advanced semiconductors to the Chinese Communist Party, having convinced the president against the advice of every sane person in the administration to do it. That is transparently against the interests of the American people, like American national security. And yet that seems to be, I mean, and we have all kinds of examples of that type of behavior. And in fairness, that's the system we've set up. And I don't think we can fix that without changing again, the policy incentives in which companies operate. It's not their fault that they're pursuing the easiest route to fastest profit. We have to change what the easiest route to fastest profit looks like so they do something else.
So, if in 2028 Chris Griswold was elected president, what would be the
God
three
help us all.
what would be the three things you would do differently? What are the three priorities to change and improve the
Yeah.
world?
Yeah. Well, just because I know we disagree on this topic, first I would repeal the safe harbor for stock buybacks, the SEC rule. But
If this would
no,
be one of the first three?
no, of course not. But I like to troll you because listeners should know that Luigi and I have fought about stock buybacks in the past. But
I did not know that.
uh, well, look, I think I would break it down into three things, like broad buckets of things that have to do with the purpose of an economy and the purpose of capitalism. One is supporting the community and civic institutions that undergird rich life and that give us meaning and purpose, family life, the education system. The other bucket of thing we've already talked about as well is making markets productive, because not all market activity is equally productive, and we have to be allowed to say that and redirect capital to productive use rather than the financial engineering that we're doing now. That's bucket two. And then bucket three, making sure workers understand themselves and in fact are treated as co-creators of economic value and not widgets or units of production. Those are the three big buckets that I would start on day one. And then the right things to do in each of those buckets, well, we could have a long conversation about that. I mean, bucket one, I would reform the education system. Our college for all model is failed. Fewer than 1 in 5 American students go smoothly from like graduating high school on time to a 4-year degree that they graduate on time to a job that required a degree in the first place. And yet all of our federal dollars, for the most part, are focused on that minority of students. College for all system has failed. We need a totally new system, in my opinion, of non-college pathways that lead both to dignified work economically and to social status as well, and close this blue collar, white collar divide that has emerged as a result of this educational system. Um, and bucket two, yeah, we need a national development bank. We need to start supporting critical industries. I'm glad that this administration and the previous one have seen fit to much more aggressively invest in critical industries using public money. But we need to systematize it. Luigi, to your concern about it not being haphazard uh, and kind of corrupted or just subject to the whims of whoever, we need to institutionalize it. We need a national development bank that is well governed and properly mandated to invest in critical industries so that we don't have the problems vis-a-vis, say, critical minerals in China as we do now. And in bucket three, in terms of making sure American workers are enfranchised in the market, there's a lot of labor reforms that I think merit consideration. One of them, the most radical one, is sectoral bargaining, where I don't see why we have to fight workplace by workplace to unionize. You do that, and then employers have a totally rational incentive to union bust because they're competing on a race to the bottom on wages. You just set a floor, a mutually negotiated floor across an industry where workers and that industry meet in general across a region or sector, set that floor, then they all have to compete on something else like innovation or product, quality or service quality and all the things we want them to actually be competing on rather than just squeezing wages. So